So this is going to be the number 1 and 2 of the Schubert D946 in their shortened versions. In other words, without the repeats. I've come to the conclusion that they're much better like that. And even though you're missing out whole measures of Schubert, if you're someone like me, it's much more enjoyable and much easier and better to do it with a shortened version without the repeats. And then number 3 I haven't yet finished, so I'm going to be just looking at the score and going slowly with that one. Okay, here we go. Let's begin. So I think I'll just pause there. Won't go on to the third one, but just a little talk about those two and why I think the repeats don't need to be done. I used to be dead against not doing the repeats in Schubert, but if you think about it, if we take Schubert's works prior to this, I think the piano works prior to this, the opus which was before this would be the second set of impromptus. That was posthumous, but anyway, it was written before. These are also posthumous, the D946, but D935 and also D899 were written before. And if you think about it, there are two massive works, those two opera. Now, if you think about those two pieces, or the Moment Musical, which were before them, or any of those sonatas that went before, and think of Beethoven or Mozart, think of Haydn, think of everything before these D946s, and let's just concentrate on Schubert's works. Before this, you could not do repeats. You could not miss out the repeats, if you wrote the repeats to be done. It wouldn't work. Why? Because that was all, I mean, it's difficult to say exactly why, but so the way that history has happened and sort of evolved, culturally speaking, you cannot miss out the repeats in any works prior to D946, in any composers, in my opinion, even in Schubert. So D899, D935 with the two sets of 8 in total impromptus, you can't miss any repeats out there because it doesn't make musical sense. It spoils the whole because they are fundamentally in a classical construction. But D946, you can, because basically You look at the way, as I say, culturally speaking, life has evolved, and it is something which is considered acceptable. Now look at the recordings which have been made. Brendel, he doesn't do the repeats in the sections when you could repeat it. In the D946, or the sonatas which came after those last three sonatas, he doesn't always do the repeats anyway. He doesn't do the fortissimo measure in the D960. He doesn't do something in the D959 he doesn't do in the D958, I think, in terms of repeats. But I think it's okay because these works are in the Romantic period. They are the first Romantic works for piano, in my opinion. And they make sense musically when you miss out the repeats. And all piano works which came after this, it's perfectly acceptable to miss out the repeats. Now I've heard it said that repeats in Beethoven's time could be done or they couldn't be done. It's up to the discretion of the performer. But that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that, and that may be the case. That may have been the case, but now it is. It would still be frowned upon to miss out a repeat of Beethoven. To be honest, these days, okay. And in those days, when Beethoven's works and Mozart's and so forth were being played, perhaps it was considered okay. But we no longer live in those times. We live in 200 years later, where we have to consider whether or not repeats are acceptable or not. And they are no longer considered acceptable because of the status which Beethoven has achieved and because of his place in the history of the piano. Of the piano sonata and piano miniature. You could say, began the piano miniatures with his Opus 33 and so forth. But Schubert, you can't miss out repeats in those, and you can't miss out repeats in any of his sonatas. Maybe you could have in his day, but now you can't because it's considered infradig. Whereas with Schubert, it is considered okay, and it makes sense musically. It doesn't make sense to miss out the repeats. It makes sense musically with Beethoven, but it doesn't make sense historiographically, if I can put it that way. Okay, so that's why it's okay to do Schubert repeats, basically. I haven't given any hard and fast evidence, I know, but I think that received wisdom would back me up on that. Yeah, I think so. Okay, and it's true that that if you look at these D946 and the way that they are linked, as I've mentioned in a previous video, to the last three sonatas. So the first, I talked about this in a previous video, the first impromptu with this bit here. That is present in the slow section of the slow movement of the D958. So, and that's similar to the trill there. And then the D959, you have this part of the part of the D946, which is similar to the what can you say, the middle section of the second movement of the D959, where it's similar to that. I can't remember how it goes now, but yeah. And then the last sonata, this part is similar to the middle part, which is the second movement of the D960, is similar to this part of the D946 number 3. Also, which I didn't mention in that last video, the ending is almost identical. I mean, it's not almost identical at all, but they're very similar, the way that they both end in the curve. So both works very, very similar in many in many respects. Okay. So yeah, given that the D946 follows those last 3 sonatas, and according to my groundbreaking theory, it makes sense that someone of the stature of Alfred Brendel would be able to produce recordings and recitals where he shortens all of those works, the D946, Klavierstücke, and the last 3 sonatas. And that's what I want to say about that. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.